My name is Russ Crutcher. For over 40 years, I've been working with the light microscope. The purpose of this series is to help you learn about some of the joy that I've experienced as a microscopist and to share some of the knowledge that I've accumulated over all this time. My background in microscopy began when I was quite young. As a youngster, I lived in eastern Washington, a very arid environment. And one of the things that impressed me was that when I got down close to the ground, there were all kinds of little animals, little insects, all kinds of little plants. There were all kinds of crystals. All of these things changed from location to location. What had looked like a fairly bare environment, in fact, was filled with all kinds of beautiful little micro-environments. That curiosity about what made up these micro-environments, how these animals lived there, how these plants grew in this desert, caused me to take a number of interesting classes when I got into the University of Washington. I was interested in mathematics, how to model the world I saw around me. I was interested in physics, how things interact. I was interested in chemistry, how things changed through time. I was also interested in people, physical anthropology. How are we made, and how do we relate to all the other life that's on this planet? All of these things were things that I was eagerly searching to find answers. During this process, I was introduced to the light microscope. When I graduated from the University of Washington, I went to work as a criminalist in a crime lab. Again, an interest in microenvironments. How do the little things we see in an environment tell us about how those things got there, what they are, how they may have changed, what caused them to change? All of these things were relevant. From the crime lab, I went to work for a large aerospace company, the Boeing company. There I was in charge of a laboratory that looked at contaminants. Contaminants on spacecraft, contaminants on aircraft, contaminants in microelectronics. It was not just the identity of the contaminant that was of interest. We had to know what it was, how it was generated, how it got to the location where it became a contaminant, and what do we do to prevent it from getting there? All of these questions were answerable through application of the light microscope. During the time I was with Boeing, Boeing took on contracts from EPA looking at the urban particle problem. That gave me an opportunity to look at the particles in an environment and determine what kinds of processes created these particles. I then knew which industries had produced the contaminants. How did the contaminants get to where we had sampled? Again, an application of physics. Opportunity to model. The chemistry was of interest. How do we verify that the particle that we see actually came from that source? I had the opportunity to work for NASA, working with spacecraft contaminants, not only contaminants on spacecraft before they went into orbit, but contaminants on spacecraft after they returned. In one case, working with the LDEF satellite, the long duration exposure satellite, I was able to identify 13 different types of contamination episodes that had contributed particles to the surface of the spacecraft. These went all the way from contaminants that had been introduced in the garage of an experimenter who was putting a project together, to contaminants that were applied to the spacecraft as a result of exposure to the space shuttle, the contaminants produced by that spacecraft. One of the things that has always interested me is not only what an object is, but how that object was created, how it moved from where it was created to where I found it, and then what does that tell us about that environment. Those are some of the things that we'll talk about as we go through this series. But the key, the central theme to all of this will be how we use the light microscope to extract the information that we need in order to answer those questions. Over this process, we'll talk about some of the things that I've encountered in my life, some of the interesting experiences that show how we use the light microscope to solve a problem. Some of these problems are kind of entertaining. Hopefully you'll also find them enjoyable. But if you have any questions as we go through this series, please ask. I've been doing this kind of work for over 40 years, and I've learned a few things about how to process samples, how to sample environments, and then how to extract information from the particles that are present. Hopefully you'll enjoy this series, and we'll continue with this story as we go along. Thank you.